Welcome, shalom to everybody. Today I wanted to go over the first 10 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. I wanted to go over the entire Hebrew alphabet as a prelude to a series I've made titled Learning Lashon HaKodesh, where we review the Jewish and rabbinic commentary and the spiritual or mystical explanations of each letter. But before we could do that, we have to know the Hebrew alphabet. So if you're already familiar with the Hebrew alphabet, this can be a nice refresher. And if you are a complete beginner, then this is the perfect place to start. First and foremost, I would suggest you have paper and pencil ready. Okay, I recommend pencil because you can erase. Pen, if you make a mistake, you're gonna have to blur it out, but whatever. The goal here is to both read and write the Hebrew alphabet. And I remember the first time I ever gave a class on my community to people much older than I was very adamant about the fact that you will never ever learn to write or read the Hebrew alphabet just by watching me talk or just by listening and watching. So let's begin this lesson with an important clarification regarding the nature of the Hebrew alphabet. The Hebrew alphabet has no vowels, only consonants. So Hebrew does have vowels, but the vowels are a separate set of writing marks known as nikudot, which we'll review in a future lesson. So they are not included in the alphabet as letters. So as an example here, I have shown the English alphabet with the 5 vowels highlighted to show how they are interspersed throughout the English alphabet. The same applies for the Spanish alphabet with the same vowels. But for Hebrew, its written alphabet consists only of consonants. So the fact that it has no vowels, this is what a text from the Torah would look like if it were directly transliterated. So right here, first and foremost, I need you to understand that in Hebrew, context clues are essential. So say you don't know what this phrase says. You've already looked at it a few seconds. Maybe you already got it. Maybe you still didn't. If you didn't already get it, I would give you a little hint. I'd say, this is the very first verse in the entire Bible, in the Torah. And if you still haven't got it, I'd say another hint is Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. So for those that are already familiar with the text, oh, well, they'd quickly recognize it and say almost fluently, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But what about someone that has never read the Bible and has no idea what Genesis 1:1 says? Right? They'd have a really hard time deciphering the text. So the fact that you have already learned and that you've already been taught Genesis 1:1 in the past, it has aided you in your reading. The same goes for reading Hebrew. So students are guided throughout their entire lives to know and familiarize themselves in every context to the point where they really don't need the vowels present to know what's written, the same way that you can read this entire text with no vowels present because you already know what it says. But the same cannot be said for the absolute beginner, and that's where we are in our learning. So, from a bird's eye view, here's the entire Hebrew alphabet, as we said, made up of only consonants. Today, we're only going to be reviewing the first 10 letters, which you'll see in a blue shade. And we're going to mention how you can transliterate each letter for your practicing purposes. So just a disclaimer, the text that you see here on the screen is a sort of typed script, meaning no one actually writes the Hebrew alphabet as you see it here, unless they're like a literal scribe, then yeah, but um, we're not practicing our calligraphy. It's more just we're using simple pencils. So it's like the equivalent of a Times New Roman font when you type on a Word document. But right here, we're just sticking to simpler forms of writing the letters. So by now, again, you are expected to have your pencil and your paper ready. And as a recommendation, as a personal, sincere recommendation, I'd say you should be writing every single letter at least 10 times or until you fill up an entire line in your notebooks, right? An entire line. Um, when you do this, you're practicing 3 things. First off, you're practicing to remember the name of the letter, how to write the letter, and 3, this is your opportunity to begin familiarizing yourself with writing from right to left. So don't make the mistake of writing regularly left to right, but rather you are expected to practice writing right to left. So since this is a pre-recorded lesson, I expect you to take the liberty in pausing the video upon each letter so that you can dedicate as much time necessary for your writing. Again, you have the liberty. Pause the video upon each letter. Everyone should go at their own pace. And the goal of this lesson is to memorize and learn to write the first 10 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So we're going to begin with the letter Aleph. I'm going to write it gigantically so you can see it nice. We use a diagonal line, one leg going down, one leg going up. That's the letter Aleph. Diagonal, one leg going down, the other going up. Diagonal, leg going down, leg going up. So Aleph is a silent letter, meaning its function is to serve the vowel that follows it. Now, when you're practicing Aleph, you might assume that Aleph is the equivalent to the letter A in English, right? But this would be wrong. It is not the equivalent of the letter A. Aleph actually has no sound. Its sole purpose is to be a marker for a vowel. Remember that the vowels have no letters. So the Aleph would indicate that there's a vowel nearby. So when you transliterate the Aleph, I would recommend, I'll put it on the side right here, I'd recommend using an apostrophe. Okay, because the apostrophe will help you distinguish the letter, serving as also a pause, breaking the words into different syllables. So as I said, you should be writing the letter Aleph throughout the entire line. Next is the letter Bet. Do a curve, and then it has a base, and it's very important to remember the base goes past the curve. The base goes past the curve. Remember that, or the line. Okay, so the first version of Bet has a dagesh in it, a dot, or we'll call it a ball. So its first name is Bet, but it also has a second name depending on the presence of the dot. So when it doesn't have a dot, it is called Vet, as you see on the screen. Now, once again, what is the difference? When the dagesh, the dot, is present, it is called Bet, making a bilabial b sound, b, as in basketball. You use both your lips, b. Now, when the dagesh is not present, as in this example, it is called vet, making a dental labial sound, as in v. So in bet, b sound, as in basketball, and vet, as in volleyball. So when you transliterate the bet, if it's a bet with a dagesh inside, you can use the letter B. But when it's a vet with no dagesh, you can use the letter V. Next is the letter Gimel. This one's a little skinnier. I'm gonna write it 4 times, just for good measure. That's the letter Gimel. So the letter Gimel is a voiced velar plosive, making a g sound, as in goat. And you've probably already guessed by now, you can use the English letter G to transliterate the Gimel. The next letter is a Dalet. Very important that you go past the line as well for Dalet, but this time on top. So the Dalet makes a dental d sound, as in the word dad. And you can use the English letter D to transliterate the Dalet. Next is the letter Hey. And you're going to have to make sure you leave a little space. The letter hey, we also remember it with the saying that says, hey, you left the window open. Hey, you left the window open. Sorry, this one needs to be a little more straight. Hey. So the letter hey is an aspirate. Its pronunciation is a breath. It's a mere exhale, as in you hear it at the start of words like happy or hold. And you can use the English letter H to transliterate the letter hey. And then we have the letter Vav, which is very easy. It's just a line from top to bottom. It's just a line from top to bottom. Now, I will make mention that in sort of calligraphy, you'll notice that on top of each letter, there's a sort of like a little hair comb sticking up. But what would I call that? A little point sticking up. Some people write it like I actually got used to it as well. So my vavs look more like this. But that is more just when you're writing with, again, like a sort of brush or a calligraphy pen. But if you're just writing with a pencil, then this will do, as you see on the example as well. That is an acceptable vav if you're just writing it with a mere pencil. So the letter vav is a labial dental, as we saw with the letter vet, pronounced as v, volleyball. And yes, you're going to have to get used to the fact that also two different letters can have the same pronunciation. So yeah, the Hebrew alphabet indeed has some duplicate sounds. Familiarize yourself with that. And the letter Vav is a consonant, but it also serves as a vowel marker similar to the Aleph. But we'll discuss that in the future once we get to the vowels. For now, the transliteration, you can use the letter V, the English letter V, to transliterate Vav. Right. Next, we have the letter Zayin, which kind of looks like a Vav, but it just has a little point at the top. Now, I got used to writing my Zayins like this, with a slanted head, but there are different forms. As you see the example there, these are all Zayins. Now, the Zayin is a sibilant making a Z sound, as in zoo, zoo, or think of the sound a bee makes, Z, Z. So you can use the English letter Z to transliterate Zayin. Okay, I turned the page so we can continue with the letter Chet. Chet looks like a hey, but this time you did indeed close the window. The letter Chet. Alright, let me do it one more time since that last one looks a little slanted. Chet. Now, if you want to go past, it's up to you. Like I said, I got used to writing that, but this is acceptable. Curved line. So this letter can be either fun or dreading, depending on if you enjoy the sound or not. But either way, I recommend you don't pronounce it in someone's face, because the letter chet is a voiceless uvular fricative, making a sound. So this letter doesn't exactly translate into English, and some people use the name Bach as an example. Bach. When you transliterate this letter, English writers tend to use the letters CH or even KH. Okay. While there's a third option, but that's more just for people with a Spanish background, that I'd recommend using the letter J. They use the letter J to represent this sound of. Now, it is very important that you remember that this will never, if you see it as CH, this will never be the ch sound, as in church or churro, because that sound is not present in biblical Hebrew. So, as I recommend, grab a tissue or don't look into someone's general direction when pronouncing the letter chet. But it is very important that you try to get that down, because a lot of people I've seen don't necessarily get it down, and they just conflate it with the pronunciation of, let's say, hey. But it definitely is its own letter. It should be respected as such. For example, in the word for spirit or wind, ruach, ruach. A lot of people say ruach or ruach, but it's ruach. Okay, so the chet is very important. Try to get that down. Then we have the letter tet, which is kind of a fun one. I write it like this. I also write it like this. Looks a little bit more like it's calligraphy font, but as you see in the example, even something as swirly as this is acceptable. Again, this is how I typically go for the tet. So the letter tet makes a dental sound pronounced as t, 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 as in the word toy. And to transliterate it, you can use the letter T. And finally, for today's lesson, we have the letter yod, which pay very close attention. That's the yod. Just like that. Now remember, if it were boxed, it would be like this. So you're noticing that the letter yod doesn't even touch the bottom the same way that the top touches the bottom. Sorry, the tet touches the top and the bottom. The letter yod is literally the only letter that just suspends in the air. Okay, and the letter yod, its pronunciation is a palatal approximant, sounding like a y, 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 as in yard. You don't touch your teeth. Tongue doesn't touch anything. It's just y, y, as in the word yard, or in the word yes. So for transliterating it, you can use the letter y, the English letter y, to transliterate the letter yod. Let's write it one more time for good measure. There it is. Now we've practiced the letter yod. So with this, we have reviewed the first 10 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And the fact that we are dividing our learning of writing Hebrew into sections is supposed to allow you time to put in the effort in mastering these letters portion by portion, rather than feeling overwhelmed by the entire thing. So by the time we continue with the second part, you are indeed expected to have already learned Aleph to Yod. And let me just tell you this right now again, you will never learn the Hebrew alphabet unless you dedicate some time every day to learning. And this could be in the simple act of just reciting the letters, or listening to the letters, or practicing your writing every day. But if you only dedicate one day of the week, 1 hour of that day to learning Hebrew, good luck with that, right? Think of any other skill. For example, learning an instrument. You're not going to learn one day a week. Learning to drive. Did you learn how to drive just by practicing once a week? Or even learning to do your job. When you go to that training those first weeks, it's not just 1 hour and then, okay, you're ready to do whatever task. So 1 hour a week is not enough to truly master the craft, especially when it comes to a language. Again, I don't know how much more I can emphasize. Do not give up. Put in the effort. There will be fantastic results, I promise. So for today, let's get that down. We practiced the first 10 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Now, I only wrote it 4 times, but I'm expecting everyone else to write it many more times. So that's it for this week. Until next time, where we continue with the second part of the Hebrew alphabet, Kaf to the letter Tav, the very end. Shalom to everybody.